Okay, welcome back again. We are now in Unit 4, and today we're discussing suicide and self harm. So, there's a bunch of stuff I put in. We're also doing alcohol and drug use. So there's a lot of stuff that I put in about suicidality in Blackboard. I'm going through some of the forms here. So, we have the teen drug use, which gives statistics about teen drug use. I'm not going to read them all to you, but I want you to look at them. It also has some interesting stuff on, what bath salts are. But you can look at the prevalence of drug use, prescription and over-the-counter illicit drug use in the United States. You can see in here that marijuana is pretty high up there in the percentage of seniors who have used drugs in the past year. What I tend to see a lot in schools is the typical marijuana and alcohol, and then I'm seeing a lot of Xanax, a lot of Xannies, um, and some students I'm getting LSD and shrooms showing up, some party drugs. But it's important to remember that while it's illegal, as you all will know, for our young kids to be using it, where I come from in counseling students with drug use is from a harm reduction model. So while I really don't want a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old using any kinds of drugs or alcohol, I'm really focusing more on the um, not driving when you're using, getting the Uber, having that be a conversation with the parents as well. Um, a lot of parents, most parents don't want their kids using any kind of drugs either. So where I come at it from is that when we look at, 13, 14, 15, 16 year olds, they're experimenting with adulthood. They're experimenting with their own independence. So it's normal for someone to experiment with their independence and to pretend that they're an adult for a time period. And thank goodness that they have that option to do it in the home in a safe environment where mom and dad might not support the use, but can support the harm reduction. So can support them by saying, you're not allowed to do this, but if you do and you find yourself in a situation, you can always call me because I'm more worried about safety than yelling at you. Um, so the spiel I tend to give to parents is we all wish, all kids are going to rebel and experiment in some form or another. We all hope we have the kid who breaks curfew for 5 minutes. We all hope we have the kid who, doesn't do some homework and lies about it. But some of us get the kid who uses drugs and alcohol. So if they're going to experiment, this might be one of the ways that they do it. And I normalize it for parents that we don't have to like it, we don't have to accept it, but we can normalize that in this age range, this is quite normal. So, so you can look over some of these statistics. This is a bit older, it is a 2012 study. Then we have the next form down is the Teen Addiction Severity Index, and this is an inventory you can use. I don't tend to use this one so much, but you can use this with your students, with your clients. I do use a baseline check-in when I was running alcohol and drug education groups, education therapy sessions with my ASAP teens, which is Adolescent Substance Abuse Prevention Programs. I would use a regular check-in that did cover some of these, especially questions 11 through 18. I might use something like that. How many meetings have you attended? Because that's one of the requirements of my program. How many days have you been treated? And kind of how many times have you been using? And I also ask the question of what sober activities have you engaged in this week and enjoyed? So that way they can fill that out. So you can look through this inventory. It's just a nice one to have. What other drug things? We have the First Contact Drug Abuse Prevention Program. So just a little article you can look through about treatment with substance users and that co-occurring disorders and mental health issues. It's an interesting program that you can read through. And then the last very page is alcohol and energy drinks, which we know are not a good blend. There's been a lot of studies that have come out, I guess not a lot, a few studies that have come out recently that I will try to find again and post, showing the correlation and possible link between uh, moderate moderate marijuana use over a period of time, and early onset Alzheimer's. So I do talk about that. I do talk to my teens about those other effects that we have. So one of the effects of marijuana is the marijuana haze that you can have. One smoking session can cause 6 months of uh, imagery, I'm sorry, of memory impairment for up to 6 months. So if they're trying to get into schools and they're really wanting to study for the SATs, or they're having problems with school and studying and getting good grades, and they're a heavy smoker or moderate smoker, it's good to know that this is something that can happen. It's good to know the correlation or the mix between ADHD and weed and ADHD and alcohol. And looking at, I usually keep I have a book of different drugs and like prescription mental health drugs and street drugs. And so I regularly go over, what does this look like if you mix this drug with this drug? So you mix your Lexapro with your weed. What is that going to be like? Mixing uppers and downers. I had an interesting situation with a client who rolled Molly 2 days in a row, and at the Rolling Loud concert in Oakland. And she then took 5-HTP, which is essentially what it is it's the that sleepy hormone in tryptophan. 5-HTP. I just want to make sure I tell you guys. It is 5 hydroxytryptophan. So tryptophan, yes. So it's essentially the same kind of stuff that comes in turkey that makes us sleepy. But seeing the correlation between her, who used Molly, so what they say to do is drop Molly and then take this 5-HTP so that it helps with your serotonin levels. But if you're on an SSRI and then you take this and then you're using drugs, it's all screwing up those channels for serotonin. What does that do? And there is a possible kind of serotonin overload you can have, like an OD. It's not going to kill you, but it can mess up your brain for a long amount of time. And so, this was an interesting thing that I had where I just got to learn about 5-HTP and those interactions. So I find frustrating with teenagers, and many of you might find this frustrating with teenagers, that they know everything. So they, because you're old, they don't want to hear what you have to say about drugs and alcohol. So I do try to come from a place of, I'm not your mama. I'm not I'm not your friend either. You can tell me what's going on with you, but then you're still going to listen to my spiel of, this is how this is affecting you. And let's do it in a non-judgmental way. I just want you to have the information. And I get pushback from students, from my clients initially, but then we tend to get into kind of a good spot with that. When it comes to treating kids with drug use in my program that I ran for substance use prevention, something we did, a model that I went by was, mine was intensive outpatient. And I would do an assessment session with the parents, an assessment session with the teen, and then an assessment session with the entire family. And then after that week of assessments was done, then I would sit down and make a plan for them, which often involved just teen therapy and just parent therapy. So I'd have simultaneous things going on to help support the parents into setting clear boundaries, consistent boundaries and rules, and also being supportive of the progress that's being made. And then working with the teen to decrease drug use and find better coping skills and work on communication with the family. After a few weeks of doing those simultaneous sessions, I then add a third session in each week. So I'd be meeting with the teen one day a week. Then I meet with the parents. So usually it was like Tuesday with the kid, Wednesday with the parents, and Thursday with the entire family. And that would be a mix of icebreaker games, just building up family cohesion, with the end goal being a family meeting with a family contract. So I would make a family rule. So you can see we have in the very middle slide here, we have our family rules. And this is a good, I'll put another one up that I really love that is just for drugs and alcohol that I have used. And this is a good one for this as well. I like mine. I like my other one also. But family meetings don't have to be an agendaed event where we sit down and someone holds the gavel and someone runs it. Oftentimes, I would say, let's do a family meeting once a week over dinner where we just say, hi, how's it going? And it doesn't have to do with drugs or alcohol, it doesn't have to do with school. It's just, how's everybody doing and what do you guys need today? And some families would do that and it would go really well. Some families just weren't going to do it. And then I often would say this is a condition of treatment and they would do it and it would go well. But in the family rules, the way I like to do it is I tend to like to start with the teen. And the reason why is because if you're using drugs and we're treating it as conceptualizing it as experimenting with adulthood, then let's be an adult today. So what do you think the rules should be around your alcohol and drug use? And what do you think the consequences should be? So we would put that together. Oftentimes more issues came out like school, because oftentimes my teens were not, the best students. They were in because they had drug problems. So what should with the one of the families I worked with, it was he was doing every drug and selling, and that's why he ended up getting expelled from school, is because he was caught selling Xanax and LSD. And so kicked out of school. Now the parents have to drive him 45 minutes to another school in the same district that would take him. So their whole life is in upheaval. Paying for lawyers, getting them in to see me, and I'm not inexpensive. My sessions were over $200 an hour. So they were saying, we're putting all this money and time into you, and we're doing it 3 times a week. So you need to do something also. So we had him create the rules with me about school, about curfew, about his drug use, and what should be the consequences. And then we present that to the mom and dad. So I advocate for the teen. I don't bullshit with the teen. He thought there should be no rules around it. And I was like, well, it's either you make these rules up or mom and dad are, and you're going to get no negotiating power. So let's start with you. So the teen makes the rules, makes the consequences, and then we present them to the parents, as well as, the teen will say, what do I have to do to earn back privileges? Because I don't want it to just be a completely negative takeaway experience. But how do you get your phone back if you fail a class, if you don't turn in an assignment, if you're caught smoking weed? What do you need to do to earn back trust and privileges from mom and dad? And so once we present it to the parents, then I meet with the parents alone. So there's no conversation about it then. It's just presenting it. I let the parents talk, think about it. And then I meet with the parents alone and we talk about what they think about it. And then I kind of work as this mediator of, well, let me tell you where his head was at when we came up with this rule. Let me tell you why I support this rule. And then we all come together as a family and do negotiations of the family contract. It gets posted in the home, and then the remainder of therapy for the rest of the time is focusing on risk reduction, so more close to sobriety, and then getting the parents to really uphold their end of the contract, which is setting the consequences and recognizing the progress. Hope that makes sense, but I found that to be really effective because it gives the kid buy-in as opposed to mom and dad which is totally fair. In my generation, mom and dad make the rules and you put up or shut up, and that's just tough cookies. But giving a child who is trying to experiment with adulthood some agency in what's going on for them, I found to be more helpful than not. And sometimes the answer is, through the whole process, is sometimes you're going to ask for this privilege or this to be the consequence, and sometimes the answer is going to be no, and that's just part of being a kid. So that's kind of some of the things I do for drugs and alcohol. And check out the links that we have in here. There are a lot of them, but I found a lot of these to be very helpful. We also are going to talk about suicide today. So we have the suicide class handouts. which you can see, these are the ones I usually give out in class. So what happens when we talk about suicide? Here are some things to think about. What's scary? Um, Examples of suicidal statements. This is something I go over with parents who are worried about what's going on with their child, or if I'm worried that they might have suicidal ideation, what they can look for. Some of the warning signs, and hopefully by now we know most of the warning signs and the behaviors, what parents and we can do: active listening, paraphrasing, silence, open and closed ended questions, self disclosure. I make up clients when I'm talking to a lot of my teens, and now in the jail, I make up clients in the jail. And that's okay. I had a client who went through this too. And sometimes it's me who went through it, but I'm not going to disclose that. So I'll have a friend or a client that did this. Um, so it's kind of just good ways of good examples of helping you or parents um, get more assessments and be more supportive. Towards the bottom, we have words that do not work. So why, but, shoulda, woulda, coulda, all that fun stuff. And then we have the risk assessment. So this is still, like probably 2/3 way down there, not page numbered, which is a bummer. But we can see that um, being at risk of committing suicide and of committing self-harm is that age range of younger adults and kids, and then older adults. Kind of in the middle is not quite the risky range. If you are female, how stressful your life is, whether or not you have coping skills, and whether or not you have supportive persons. Predictors are if you have a plan. So we're going to go over IMAP again, but we went over that last quarter, I think. Intent. So do you have an intent to harm yourself? First, we start with ideation when we're asking somebody, do you think about wanting to kill yourself? Do you think about hurting yourself? And that's the first step in assessment. If they say yes, then we can ask a few more questions. How would you do it? Do you have intentions to actually do it? If you could, what's your plan? Do you have an actual plan? Does that plan have like a time or a date? When I leave this office, I'm going to run my car into the median. I'm going to run my car off the cliff. Okay, do you have a car? So now do you have means? Yes, I have means. Are your keys with you? Do you have access to the means? Yes, I do. Have you ever tried to kill yourself before? So any previous attempts? All of those are going to put them at a higher risk to predict for suicidality. So you can see some of the intervention models: identify the suicidal intention, explore the risk, take action to de-escalate, and give resources. And we're going to go over IMAP, and we're going to go over the